in a town where truth lived in whispers, and justice was just a shadow on the wall. A boy once stood on broken pavement, holding a notebook and a dream no one believed in. They told him to keep his head down, to follow, to obey, because change, they said, isn't for boys like you. But he wasn't born to obey. His name was Amari Fields, son of a factory worker, grandson of a janitor who was never allowed to vote. In a world stacked high with red tape and backroom deals, Amari dared to write the impossible. One day, I'll change the system. And when he said it out loud in class, they didn't just laugh. They howled. Even the teacher smirked. But systems don't break on their own. They're protected by silence, power, and blood. At 17, Amari saw his best friend arrested for stealing a loaf of bread. At 19, he watched his mother evicted by a judge who used to shake her hand at church. At 21, he stood before the mayor and asked, "Why do the laws protect the wealthy, but punish the poor for trying to eat?" The mayor laughed. Security escorted him out. He read the laws they wrote to keep people like him down. Then he rewrote them, in his mind, in his notebook, and later in court. They never saw him coming. Not the corrupt DA he exposed in a housing scandal. Not the sheriff whose funding mysteriously vanished after a secret prison deal. Not the city council, who lost their seats after he dropped the footage. But with every victory, the threats grew louder. They tried to end him, firebomb his car, hack his records, smear his name across headlines, paint him as a radical, a threat. But Amari wasn't fighting for fame. He was fighting because he remembered. Every laugh, every door slammed, every voice silenced. He didn't want revenge. He wanted restoration. Narrator, for the wrongly incarcerated, for the child taken from a mother by a system that claimed to know better, for the tired, the grieving, the overlooked. He stood, and then, when the headlines quieted, he did the unthinkable. He announced his campaign for president of the United States. Laughter rippled again, this time on national TV. A community lawyer? No political background. He'll never survive the primaries. He doesn't even own a super PAC. But they didn't understand. Amari wasn't backed by billionaires. He was backed by the forgotten. From barbershops in Chicago, to farmland in Alabama, to college campuses in Oakland, they came, not for a politician, but for a man who never lied to them. A man who didn't just talk about change. He bled for it. They're planning to rig the debates. You need to be careful. They've buried worse stories for less. The system was never going to surrender. Not without war. Soon after, an anonymous scandal broke. A forged document linking Amari to foreign funding. The media swarmed. Donors pulled out. But before the storm swallowed him whole, a whistleblower surfaced. The scandal? Planted by his opponent. His old law school rival turned senator, a man Amari once mentored. The snake tried to strike from the shadows. But truth, no matter how buried, finds its way back to light. Amari's numbers skyrocketed. He wasn't just a candidate now. He was a movement. They laughed when he said he'd change the system. Now, they hold their breath as votes are counted. And as the nation waits, one question lingers in the silence. Will the system finally bend? Or will it break trying to stop him? Change doesn't knock politely. It storms the gates. And when Amari Fields stood one step from the highest office in the land, the system that once mocked him started to shake. Because this time, the people weren't watching silently. They were watching everything. He had nothing left to prove, but everything left to fight for. He remembered every courtroom, every broken promise on a billboard, every woman who buried a son the system forgot. This isn't about me, he whispered. This is about all of us. But the system wasn't done yet. Voting machines malfunctioned in key swing states. Ballots missing in majority black districts. Early lead erased in 48 minutes. Officials unsure why. It wasn't an election. It was a siege. And the message was clear. Win if you can, but not too much. But this time, Amari wasn't fighting alone. A poll worker leaked surveillance footage. An IT tech found a line of code that skewed results. And a janitor, yes, a janitor, turned over a hidden USB drive with names, dates, and orders. The same system that silenced generations had left fingerprints on everything. They told him to concede for the good of the country, to bow out gracefully. But grace doesn't mean silence. He didn't come this far to be a symbol. He came to be a sword. He didn't just fight for recounts. He fought for indictments. 2 governors, a tech CEO, and 3 high-ranking election officials, all brought down by a man they once called naive. They offered him comfort, status, wealth. All he had to do was let go of the White House. But power wasn't his goal. Truth was. So he walked out of that room and walked into history on the 13th day of recount, with the eyes of the world watching. Omari Fields was declared the president-elect of the United States, not because the system allowed it, but because the people demanded it. He took his oath not as a politician, but as a promise. To every child ever told stay in your place, to every voice ignored, every vote stolen, every dream ridiculed, he stood tall and whispered to the world, "This time, we're building a system that sees everyone." They tried to silence his voice, but it echoed across a nation and became a movement no one could ever bury again. Power changes people, but for Omari Fields, it tested something deeper. He had won the highest seat in the land. But what do you do when the castle you've entered was built on centuries of hidden bones? He wasn't just inheriting a title. He was inheriting a battlefield. They didn't clap. They didn't greet. Some refused to speak his name at all. He wasn't part of the club. He didn't shake the right hands. He didn't know favors. He was a reminder that the people still had power, and that terrified them. His first executive orders were clear: mandatory transparency in federal contracts, independent prosecutors for all civil rights violations, and a massive audit of prison labor funding. Within days, Wall Street shook. Media moguls launched whisper campaigns, and one major bank went dark overnight. Then came the threat. He had crossed a line. This wasn't about politics anymore. This was war, and the enemy was inside the house. The betrayal cut deeper than any headline. The system didn't just resist change. It infected those who try to fix it. But Omari had learned something long ago. You don't clean a poison well by sipping around the edge. You burn the whole foundation and start again. He bypassed the system, went straight to the people. Every bill, every signature, every meeting, broadcasted. Millions tuned in. The nation watched democracy being rebuilt in real time. And then the system panicked. They tried to remove him on paper, but forgot who put him there in the first place. The people. Protests erupted. Veterans, students, single mothers, marching side by side, not for a man, but for the truth he refused to bury. "I don't fear removal," he said. "I fear the day you stop believing change is possible." He wasn't defending himself. He was defending us. And when the final vote came, he stayed seated. And for the first time in modern history, the Senate backed down. He didn't stay in office forever. He didn't want to. He rewrote laws. He freed thousands. He planted a seed. And then he walked away. He was never supposed to win. He was never supposed to last. But he did more than survive. He shifted the soul of a nation. And now, his echo lives in every voice that dares to say, "We want better. We demand more. And we will be heard." The system laughed, but the people remembered. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, and share for more chilling stories.